All right, we're coming into the new year, and the title of this video is, Should You Set Goals or Resolutions for Yourself coming into this new year? And I think that there's less and less people that are taking the time to think through and set goals, to set resolutions. Is that something that you should do? Or, forget about it, because after all, the statistics say that like 80% of those who set goals or resolutions going into the new year, by February 1st, they're going to fail, they're going to give up, they're going to throw up their arms and quit. 90% will be done by March 1st, something like that. The statistics are very stacked against the person who sets those goals and resolutions. So should you do it? Should I be setting goals? Well, I read this story some time ago, and I can't remember the source. I don't know if the story's true or not, and actually the point of the story is not whether it's true or not. The principle is true, and so I want to share it with you, and then you can make up your own decision on it, all right? But this 90-year-old lady went across the country to visit her daughter. And this 90-year-old woman had a habit. Every evening she would journal. And towards the end of every year, she would begin to set new goals for herself. And so she excused herself this evening, getting ready for bed, said goodnight, went into the room, pulled out her journal, and she entitled this journal entry 10 goals for the new year, like top 10 goals for the new year. And she listed out, at 90 years old, listed out her top 10 goals for the new year. Went to bed and never woke up. The next morning, her daughter came in and found her mom there and found the journal. 90 years old, top 10 goals for the next year. And what an inspiration that is. That woman went to bed that night and didn't know that it was her last night. She was still living, still aspiring to higher and greater things and setting goals for her life and challenging herself in these new ways. And I just found that so inspiring. I never forgot that story, and I'm like, I want to be like that. I never want to stop setting goals or having higher ambitions for myself or trying to raise the bar in my own life. How about you? And so the question is, should you set goals? Should I be setting goals and resolutions? Should we be doing that for ourselves? Yes, yes, yes. Set goals, set resolutions. And, I use those two terms because a lot of people have gotten away from the term resolutions. Like, oh, I don't like that word resolutions anymore. It has a negative connotation and, everybody quits them anyway. Well, I would encourage you to rethink that. Think about resolutions in this way. Think about them as how they're defined. What does that word resolution mean? Well, it means a strong or a firm commitment, dedication to do something or to stop doing something. I think the world needs more people who are willing to have a firm commitment towards something or to stop doing something. So I like the word resolution because I like the definition. And rather than being so quick to toss that word out, hey, check out the definition and go, ooh, yeah, that's strong. I can sink my teeth into that. Yeah, I want to be about that. But if not, choose the word goals. All right, and so in this video, let's talk about 3 whys of setting goals. All right, here's 3 whys that you and I should be setting goals. And then after that, I want to talk about 4 hows, 4 how-tos on setting goals, because I want you to set yourself up for success. I don't necessarily believe in statistics from a standpoint of that I have to be one of them. You don't have to be a statistic. You don't have to be one of the people that, is 80% by February 1st or 90% by March. Why are we going to let that define us? Like, no way. We're going to rise above that. We're going to rise above it. We're going to set our ambitions high, and then I'm going to share some how-tos with you, okay? But let's talk about the whys on setting goals. The number one reason, and actually these 3 aren't in any particular order, but I put number 1 is I think we should raise our ambitions to be more and to live more. I want to do that. I want to raise my ambitions for 2021. I want to raise the bar. I want you to challenge yourself in that way, to be more, to live more in 2021. That's why we should be setting goals. All right, raise those ambitions. And number 2, personal growth. I think we ought to be growing. I think of that 90-year-old lady challenging herself to be more, to grow more, to challenge. I think of 1996, and if you're a Florida Gator fan, you might remember that year, because that was the year Florida Gator quarterback Danny Wuerffel won the Heisman Trophy. And I think Danny was a great young man. I, at that time, was working for an organization called the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We were putting on a spring, I think it was in the spring, a spring retreat for all the college athletes in Florida, North Florida, Central Florida, South Florida. We're at this retreat, and we knew the University of Florida was supposed to be coming. We had heard that Danny Wuerffel was going to be there, and all of us wanted to meet Danny Wuerffel. So the retreat starts on a Friday evening, no Florida Gators. The speaker's speaking, all the colleges are there, but the University of Florida wasn't there. I'm sitting towards the back as a staff person. There's an empty seat next to me. Before long, that last bus arrives, the University of Florida. Danny Wuerffel comes off the bus, walks in. Now the speaker's speaking. We're trying to pay attention to the speaker, but everybody's like, that's Danny Wuerffel. Danny Wuerffel's over here. So we're looking like, oh, and Danny Wuerffel walks in, and he picks the empty seat right next to me, and he plops down. Now I'm not paying attention to the speaker anymore. I'm just like, oh my gosh, Danny Wuerffel's sitting next to me. I want to ask him a question, but I don't want to be like an idiot or a fool. I don't want to come across. What do you ask Danny Wuerffel? And so I'm just trying to think of one question that I can ask Danny before he left for the night. The retreat ends, and everybody starts leaving the aisles. Danny he turns and begins to walk out. And I said, hey, Danny, and I tap him on the shoulder, and I said, hey, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah, go ahead. And the one question I thought of was this. I said, Danny, what do you do in the off season to stay in shape? And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, oh, Jason, he said, there is no off season. He said, for me, there is no off season. I stay in shape all year round. I'm challenging myself all year round, in season and out of season. I'm watching my nutrition. I'm in the weight room. There is no off season. Here's what he said, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. There's no in between. And so when we talk about reasons, I love that. Of course, I've never forgotten that. But one of the reasons why I think you and I should set goals is for that personal growth. We're either getting better, we're moving forward, or we're moving backwards. There's no in between. Which one are you going to choose? And so, yes, we raise our ambitions, set the bar high in your life. Personal growth, we ought to be growing, stretching ourselves, challenging ourselves. And then number 3, the third reason why I believe we should be setting goals is a role model. You could be a great role model. Absolutely. That 90-year-old woman, what an incredible role model she was. Danny Wuerffel, what an incredible role model he was. 21 years later, after 1996, the Florida Gators had another quarterback who won the Heisman Trophy. You probably know his name, Tim Tebow. Whether you're a Florida Gator fan or not, whether you're a Tim Tebow fan or not, you cannot argue whether Tim was a good role model or not. He was an awesome role model and is an awesome role model. And I think the world needs more good role models. I think the world needs more good, period. But you setting goals, resolutions for your life and begin to move in that direction, me doing that, we're being role models for our peers. We're being role models for a younger generation. We're being role models for an older. We're just being role models, period. And I think the world needs more of that. And I challenge you to be a role model in 2021 by setting goals, by setting resolutions for your life. And I want to challenge you in that way. All right, so very quick recap on the whys on why we should be setting goals. Number one, it raises your ambitions. Number two, there's personal growth. Always be challenging yourself. Number three, be a role model. It's a great way to be a role model. All right, now the hows, because you want to set yourself up for success. You want to be realistic with your goals and stretch yourself and achieve these things. All right, so let's talk about that. How do we go about setting goals for ourselves? Well, number one, instead of having this hodgepodge list of goals, this really long list of goals on a piece of paper, and you go, oh my gosh, I look at that and I'm overwhelmed. I would encourage you to do this. This is what I do in my life. I set categories. I set categories. And I did this last year with my son, Sam. And I want to use him as an example because he had an incredible 2020. But you may not know Sam, and it would help you if I shared a little bit of his background with you. My boy Sam's 19 years old. He's my youngest of 4 kids. Sam was born with special needs. He was born with hydrocephalus and spina bifida. It's where a portion of the spinal column doesn't close all the way, and so the nerves grow outside of the spine, and the amniotic fluid damages those nerves, and it's permanent. At least at this point, medically, it's permanent. Sam, at 19 now, has had some 33 surgeries in his life. Some of those were on his brain, and it's caused some processing issues with their Sam, from the waist down, has no mobility, so he's in a wheelchair. And as you can imagine, it makes it harder for him to get around. But his ambitions, his desires, his aspirations as a teenager are not different than other teenagers. He still wants to drive. He still wants independence. He wants to go and get around and be free, right? You remember those days? Well, at the beginning of 2020, we said, all right, let's set some goals. Let's make 2020 a huge year. And we picked 3 categories, right? Because we're talking about how do I set these goals. I want to say, number one, have categories. Don't just have random goals. Set categories for yourself. Sam picked 3 categories. They were mental, physical, and spiritual. Yours, you can have mental, physical, spiritual. You can have health. You can have financial. You can have relational, marriage, work, business, whatever it is. But have categories. Those were Sam's 3, mental, physical, spiritual. The mental, want to read 8 books with my dad, journal what I learn, and apply it to life. Very simple. Number 2, physical. I want to complete a 26.2 mile road race, that's a full marathon, in my hand cycle. Can you imagine covering that distance, 26.2 miles, just with your arms? I remember our first training ride with Sam. He made it 2 miles. That's it. It took us a while to make it that 2 miles, and it wiped him out the entire day. He went to bed and slept the rest of the day. But you know what? Every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks or so, we would increase the mileage just by a little bit. And then he would get a little stronger, a little bit more endurance. That by the end of the year, he completed the Space Coast Marathon, 26.2 miles, and crushed it. He beat all of his training rides by 25 minutes. He just stuck with it, right? He was resolute, that firm commitment to do a thing, he stayed with it. He also, that physical goal, he said, Dad, I want to learn how to drive a car. I want to get around. I want to get a car. I want to learn how to drive it. Awesome. That's huge. I didn't know what to do, but everything's figure-outable. I believe that. So we got hand controls in my car, and he started learning to drive my car. And we would practice 3 or 4 times a week, rain or shine. Like, son, you got to learn how to drive in the rain. You can't just go places when the sun's out, right? So we would drive in the dark. We would drive early in the morning. We would drive in traffic. We would drive in the rain. It didn't matter. He just took it and he learned it. And this year he got his driver's license. Not only that, but he got his own vehicle. I'm like, holy cow, this kid is going, he's crushing it. And then spiritually, Dad, I want to read through the New Testament. I want to journal what I'm reading. Great, let's go for it. So we did that. So those were his categories. We're talking about the how-tos. How do I set goals for myself? Have categories, break them down. You know, you can have 2 categories, 5 categories, 10 categories, whatever you want to do. I'm going to leave it up to you, all right? Number 2, keep the execution of that goal simple. Keep it simple. You know, for Sam, all right, we're going to drive. Okay, 3 days a week, we're going to get in the car, we're going to drive. We didn't overcomplicate things. I remember I had a buddy of mine come to me at the beginning of last year. He's like, all right, we're going to set some goals. You know, I'm going to have some physical goals, some nutrition goals, and some spiritual goals. And he got a handful of us guys, and he came with these elaborate spreadsheets, right? And in order to execute these goals, we had to have inputs, and everything had to be charted out. Some of it was color-coded. It was elaborate. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's heart is gold. These goals are a great idea, but it was so complex in the execution. I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, nobody's going to stick with this. It's too difficult. It's too elaborate to execute on. Keep your execution of your goals, whatever they are, keep them simple. All right? So number one, have categories. Number two, keep the execution simple. Number three, I want you to give yourself permission for grace. Here's the balance. Think of a seesaw. Remember when you were a kid, you got on the seesaw with your friends, right? You struck a balance there up and down. Determination and grace. I want you to balance those two out. You're not after perfection. You're after progress. And here's the bottom line. Some days you're going to crush it, and some days you're not. And that's okay. And I think part of the reason why those statistics are what they are, like 80% of the people by February 1st, they throw up their hands and they quit. And it's because they don't have a balance between determination and grace. They don't extend themselves some grace. They go, all right, I failed. I'm done. They throw in the towel. 90% by March 1st or whatever. I don't know what the exact quote is, but it's something like that. Don't be one of those. Man, forget that. I want you to play the long game when it comes to your goals and ambitions and aspirations. Think the entire year. Think big picture. Think progress, not perfection. All right? I think that's one of the downfalls of social media. Everything looks so perfect on there. Man, that's falsehood. Everything's not perfect, except for these signs that my wife made. I'm looking at these signs over here. My gosh, my wife just made these for me. Desire, hustle, focus. It's kind of my tagline. As a matter of fact, when we talk about goals and ambitions, you've got to have desire, hustle, focus. That's where the determination comes in. So I want to shout out to my wife really quick, Wendy. Thank you, sweetie pie, for making these for me. But have categories for your goals. Keep the execution simple. Extend yourself grace. Have a balance between grace and determination. I want you to play the long game when it comes to you're after progress, not perfection. And lastly, I'll say this, consider bringing a friend in. And I go back to my boy Sam. He said, Dad, would you do this with me? He pulled me in. I love it. There's a biblical principle. I don't know what your beliefs are. You know, you have the freedom to believe whatever you want, you know. And but this biblical principle holds true no matter what our background or beliefs are. And I think you'll agree with me when you hear it. And it's this: two are better than one because they have a greater return for their work. It's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think life was meant to be lived in relationship with others. And I think there's beauty and there's joy and there's depth and there's greater meaning when we journey, when we make the choice to journey with others and bring them in to the challenge, to the growth, to raising the ambitions. And so I would just ask you to consider that. Consider journeying 2021 with somebody, with a loved one or with a close friend or a group. Why? Because two are better than one. There's a greater return for their labor. So, hey, if you found this video helpful, throw down some likes or some comments. You're probably thinking of somebody else who goes, man, or maybe it's that friend that you want to bring in to raise the ambitions and to set the goals, the resolutions. But you may be thinking of somebody, hey, you're not listening to this by accident, so pass this on, share it with a friend. You can also hit my YouTube channel, Climb Higher Coaching. You can watch some other videos on there, throw down some comments. I appreciate you hanging in with me this long for whys and how-tos on setting goals. The only thing that's left is for you and I to Come on, let's get after it. Let's desire, hustle, focus, set those goals, raise the ambitions for 2021. All right, get after it.